Headings, text tags of web development. You can look at headings like titles of your web pages, your sections, or some small group contents. At first glance, headings may seem simple, but there are a lot of things to be said about headings. So, let's break it down. To begin with, there is 6 types of headings, and they start with H1 and they go all the way to the H6. Starting with H1 being the most important one and H6 being the least important one. Now, let's see how headings look like when added. At first glance, you can see what's the obvious difference between these headings. That's the size. They start with H1 being the biggest one and they go all the way down to H6 being the smallest one. There are 2 important things to keep in mind when using headings. First one is hierarchy. What does this mean? This means that you should be consistent when you're using headings. Go from H1 all the way down to H6. You shouldn't mess up your structure like going with H3, then with H1, then with H6. This is a bad practice. This is how your hierarchy should look like. Later on, I'll show you how your hierarchy should look like in a practice. But first, let me talk about second important thing with headings. And that thing is connected directly to H1. You should only have one H1 per your web page. And all the other headings are titles to your sections, to some small group contents, and so on and so on. The H1 is unique because it represents the whole page. It's the title of whole page. Now, let me show you how to keep hierarchy in practice and to show you how I maintained order in my web page. First of all, I have my H1, which is title to my whole web page. Now, if I go and scroll down a bit, you will notice that my next heading is H2. And this heading is title to this whole section. Right below my H2, when I zoom a bit, you will notice that the next one is H3. And this is the title to this content group. Right down below, there is another content group and there is also an H3. You're probably thinking why this heading here is not H4. Well, H4 will be suitable to put inside of this text group. For example, if you want to have a subheading for this text here, there you would put a H4. And even if you want a subheading to that H4, then you will put an H5. Now, when I scroll down below to this new section, the whole system of hierarchy will reset. This means this whole section will begin again with H2 and it will be the title for whole section, and this here will be H3 being the heading for this text group. This will also be H3 because these text groups are different. You would use H4 here if you want to have, again, subheading to these small text groups. Now, let me show you how can you edit these heading tags. You just need to select your tag, then go to the settings panel and you will notice content option here. Let's change this text, for example, and type in "this text is amazing." You will notice when I click outside that this text is changed. But what if you want, for example, to change this whole tag from, let's say, H1 into some different tag? You can achieve that in a few clicks. You just need to go to the settings panel and you will notice a convert option. Here you can click on any tag, for example this H4, and our H1 will be transformed into H4. But because this heading tag is the first one on our page and it's the title of our page, it would be wise for it to be H1. So let's go and change it into H1. Now, let's talk about some technical stuff connected to headings. I'll talk about 2 things. First one is SEO boost and second one is accessibility. So, let's begin with SEO boost. Search engines like Google use H tags to figure out what your page is all about. So, using a relevant, for example, H1, can help your page show up in search results. Let's take an example for this. Let's say you have a web page for cooking. It would be wise to input into your H1 some keywords like food, tasty, kitchen, or cooking. Let's say a few words about accessibility. Headings make your web page more accessible for people who use screen readers. A clear heading tags helps them understand the page's content. You're probably thinking now, why I even mentioned these two things? Well, they're pretty important if you want your website to be better ranked on some search engines like Google. To clarify this even more, let me take the previous example about cooking website. For example, one user goes to the search engine, for example Google, and starts typing something like tasty food recipes. If you have well-organized headings and some good keywords, SEO of your website will be good, and your website will be pushed to the top search results. This means your website will have more visitors and overall a better score on Google. This will be everything for this video. I'll see you in another one.